Growing up in Donegal, Daniel O'Donnell could never have imagined, coming from humble beginnings, that he would be catapulted onto the world stage with a following of millions. Despite his success, he felt something was missing. That was until he married his partner, Magella. How's married life?
Very good, yes. It's been a good time since we got married. We got married in 2002, so that's, well, it's only 6 years. It'll be 7 years in November this year. And fantastic, yeah, very lucky to have found someone like Magella.
And how do you feel it has made your life fuller? Because there was something that you talked about fundamentally missing in your life, the missing piece of the jigsaw, as you said, prior to meeting Magella.
Well, I suppose I only realised that maybe since I got married. You know, I would always have said that prior to meeting Magella, I was very content, very happy, you know, in life. But since meeting her and since, you know, we getting married, it's the fulfilment, you know, to have somebody in your life. It's only people that I suppose have that know what I'm talking about, and I know there's a lot of people know what I'm talking about. To share things, you know, to have, you know, the career that I had and the opportunities that I had in life, to have somebody to share all that with is fantastic.
Okay, we'll get to the romance, the courtship a little bit later, but I want to try and bring you back to the beginning. As a young fella, did you see yourself as being somewhat of a misfit? And I say that in the context that you didn't really play sports, or you didn't really fit in with the rest of the guys. You weren't into doing the manual labour that everyone wanted to do at that time. So did you feel yourself somewhat detached then from your peers?
I don't know that I realised it at the time. You know, I suppose when you look back, maybe. But you know, we were out and about and playing outside, and, you know, as children, because we were so near to the beach, you know, in the summertime, that's where we would spend all of our time. There was a rock just outside our house that was shaped like that, and we had a stick in it, and that was a seesaw. I don't think, you know, that I felt anyway different. I suppose, you know, I started working in the Cope, as it was, in Kincastle when I was only at national school. So from a very early age, I was introduced to older people because I worked in the shop. I used to go around in the van. At that time there was a van, went around all the rural areas on a few days in the week, and I would have gone in the van. So I got to know a huge amount of people throughout the community.
Just like Kincastle and many other parts of Ireland at the time, people had to leave in order to get work, send money home. Your father had to do that quite a lot. Were you conscious of the fact that you were missing that male role model, that father figure in your life at that early age?
Yeah, I was too young, really. I think, you know, even when my father died, I was too young to realise the effect of that. My older brothers and sisters, James was next to me, and he was 10 when my father died. So from James up, they would have, you know, experienced a greater loss than I did. I don't remember much about my father being away. I do remember him, I suppose, being away and coming home, but I suppose it was natural too, because that was what he did. He used to go away. I think he came home to sort of cut turf and set potatoes and that kind of thing, and at some point of the year.
Your mother was always pretty much centre stage in your life, even as a young fella. In fact, you were Julia's pet. Still Julia's pet?
Well, I was on my own, you see, at home. The others, you know, moved away, and we were there in the house, I suppose, from I was about 10. We were on our own a lot of the time, even though the others came and went. So from that point of view, obviously, you know, there was a great closeness. And I was always, and still am, very aware of the sacrifices she made, you know, for all of us, not just for me. And I mean, I think we're very lucky that you know, she's lived, you know, till she'll be 90 this July, and you know, she's in good health, you know, for her age. She's fantastic. Yeah. To be able to have enjoyed life as she has. I hope she's enjoyed it anyway, and that we've been able to, you know, make her feel somewhat repaid for all she did for us. We'll never repay her in full.
I think it's probably fair to sum up your teen years in school as someone who was a reluctant academic. But nonetheless, there came a point before you decided to go into academia at a third level. You headed off to Dublin to work in I think it was the Central Hotel, was it? And that, for you, sticks out in your memory as probably one of the best summers you ever had. Why?
My brother James, you see, he was a chef there at the time, and he got me, you know, a job washing the dishes for the summer. I suppose it was my first time away from home, first time when I could do whatever I wanted to do, and all I wanted to do was go to the dances. I went to the dances 8 times a week. We used to go, you know, to the Irish Club and the Iron and the National and the Olympic and the TV Club, and even on the Sunday, how could you have 8 dances in a week? On a Sunday afternoon there used to be a Ceilidh in the Irish Club, and we even went to that. And that certainly was. It was a great, I mean, I went horse riding for the first time when I was working in the hotel, and just things that, I mean, it might sound simple to go horse riding, but we just didn't have them opportunities at home, even though we lived in the country. And I think the freedom that it gave me to do all these things and to just go to all these dances and experience that. I just loved it. It's hard for me to just say when I thought about music as a career. In my late teens, I suppose, I used to go out at home, and we would go to the Ostan in Dungloe. The Ostan, the Rosann was the hotel, and there was a band played there all the time called the Murrays or La Scala. They were a family band from Burton Port, and they would always get me up to sing, and I enjoyed them that opportunity tremendously. And sometimes we'd go to Leo's too, which Leo is the father of Enya and Maya and the boys in Clonard, Paul and Kieran. And we would go there, and you know. So I loved getting up to sing. So even though I was going on to college, I don't know if I really knew I was going to stick at it.
The reality is you had no intentions probably of sticking at it, and you went headlong into a music career around about 1980 when you rang Margaret and said, "This is it, I want out," and then you hooked up with her to do a little bit of work with her.
She wasn't that adamant that I would sing, because I think her experience in music was not as good as mine. You know, she, you know, when she talks about it, you know, I really enjoyed the music business, and there really is nothing about it that I could criticize, or nothing, you know, in my life that the music business has created that's negative. So I suppose her view of it maybe was different to mine, and maybe she didn't really want me to experience that. But I started with her, and that 2 years with her was kind of like an apprenticeship, you know.
You also sought counsel from the likes of Bridie Gallagher and Philomena Begley. They weren't that enthusiastic in terms of telling you that this is a wonderful thing to be involved in. They urged caution.
My favourite singer of all time is Loretta Lynn. And here in Ireland, Philomena, you know, was always, I just loved her singing. I knew her from I was very small. So I remember going up to her house in Tyrone. Catherine, my sister, I think, and her husband would have taken me up, and to ask Philomena's advice. I suppose it's funny how, you know, you would think that much of somebody, even though it was a stranger, and probably Philomena, she knew loads of people like me, But I remember going and Philomena was, I think she was baking bread, you know, and she had flour. I know she was baking bread, flour up to the elbows, and that, I suppose, in itself, you know, was strange, because you don't imagine that people that are well known live normal lives, you know, that they do normal things like that. And I remember saying to her, you know, I'm thinking about going into singing, and, you know, what did she think? And I remember her saying, she says, stick to the books. So obviously, you know, I only wanted the answers from anybody. That was what I wanted to hear. You know, she told me that, but that was, I disregarded that, and off I went.
And off you went then to Castle Blaney, to Big Tom's recording studio, to lay down your first track, and subsequently went on to sell that on the bus going down to Knock with the Pilgrims.
Well, that was, I spent the 2 years with Margaret, and then in the March or February of 1983, I joined her in January 81. I went to record in Big Tom Studios, and that was the 9th of February, and that was, I suppose, Basil Hendricks produced that, and I had met Basil somewhere, and you know, he sort of said, hey, sure, you should make the record, and I don't really know how, when I look back on it now, how I had the confidence to do that, because I remember as I was going into the studio, I thought, you know, well, these people think that I think an awful lot of myself, that I'm good enough to sing. I knew I loved singing, I knew, I suppose, I could sing, but that I'm good enough to actually make a record, you know. And I went in, and I just, it was a nerve-wracking day for me, really, I suppose. But I sang, I recorded 4 songs, but the 2 that I released first was Stand Beside Me and My Donegal Shore. Now, only recently, Magella and I were looking at something and saw that Stand Beside Me was actually the one we chose to be the A-side. At that time, there was an A-side and a B-side. Now it's just, you know, there's no real difference. You just do one song, and it's on a CD, so there's no 2 sides to it. But we I chose Stand Beside Me. But it was actually My Donegal Shore that was the song that eventually got the attention.